In the annals of martial arts history, few encounters have carried the weight of anticipation and the intensity of a silent challenge quite like the moment when Joe Louis, the celebrated boxing and kickboxing champion, openly declared Bruce Lee overrated. The air in the gym that day was thick with a mingling sense of sweat, leather, and anticipation, as reporters circled like hawks, pens poised over paper, and cameras primed to capture every subtle reaction. It wasn't just another story for the morning news. It was an event that hinted at a collision of two worlds, the scientific philosophy of movement and speed versus the raw, earth-shaking force of combat experience. Joe Louis had just finished a punishing session on a heavy bag, each thudding kick echoing against the walls, vibrating through the metal chains that suspended the bag, muscles gleaming with exertion, sweat sliding down his forehead. He paused and leaned casually against the ropes, his eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the room as if weighing whether the question about Bruce Lee was worth answering at all. When a reporter finally broke the tense silence, stepping forward with a microphone, the answer came with shocking bluntness. "Bruce Lee is overrated," Louis said. The words cracked through the gym like a whip, a singular sentence that would reverberate far beyond those walls, sparking debates and speculation in the martial arts community for years to come. For a moment, the gym itself seemed to freeze. Pens scratched furiously across notebooks. Cameras clicked in rapid bursts, and the reporters instinctively leaned forward, try to catch even the slightest inflection in Louis's tone. What would Bruce Lee do? Would he respond, defending his growing reputation as a master of speed and precision? Or would he remain silent, letting the words hang in the air like a challenge unspoken? The question wasn't merely about ego. It was about philosophies of combat, the meaning of skill, and the unseen battles that occur beyond the public eye. The story of their tension did not begin with insults, nor with headlines. It began in the unglamorous, sweaty spaces of gyms in late 1960s Los Angeles. These were places where bruises were badges of effort, where the sound of fists connecting with leather was as common as the smell of sweat-soaked mats. Bruce Lee, though not yet the global icon he would become, was already a figure of intrigue and admiration in smaller circles. His commitment to perfecting movement, timing, and the fluidity of martial arts set him apart. Meanwhile, Joe Louis was a dominant force in the ring, a man whose power was feared and respected. He had already earned a reputation for knockouts, precision kicks, and a competitive fire that left opponents reeling. Their worlds converged in training spaces that were intimate yet charged with tension. Small gyms, backyards, and training halls became laboratories where human movement was tested, stretched, and redefined. Bruce Lee approached training not merely as a physical exercise, but as a study in philosophy and biomechanics, refining every flick of the wrist, every pivot, and every step until it became an almost imperceptible dance of anticipation and reaction. Louis, on the other hand, brought brute force, experience, and competition, and the raw intensity of a fighter who survived the unforgiving scrutiny of judges, crowds, and the unforgiving mathematics of victory and defeat. This collision of approaches set the stage for a dynamic rarely seen in martial arts history. What was about to unfold wasn't just a debate of words, but a confrontation of ideas and principles. The tension between theoretical mastery and applied power, between the artistry of movement and the tangible dominance of force, would challenge both men and leave an indelible mark on those fortunate enough to witness it. Even the reporters, who had come expecting drama, were unprepared for the depth of the story that would emerge. This wasn't simply about proving who was stronger or faster. It was about exploring the essence of martial arts, the philosophy behind the fight, and the subtle truth that sometimes the greatest victories are won before a single punch is thrown. The stage was set. The audience was invisible yet omnipresent, represented by the whispers, the pen scratching across paper, and the click of cameras. At the center of it all stood two men, one wielding raw, tested power, the other harnessing precision, philosophy, and innovation, a collision of paths that would ripple through history. In this video, we will explore that story in full, retracing the journey from Joe Louis's provocative declaration to the private, life-altering encounter between the two legends. We will dive into their training sessions, their philosophies, and the moment when one sentence changed the course of a rivalry that had been simmering quietly for years. By the end, you'll see not just a confrontation, but a lesson in martial arts, strategy, respect, and understanding. The kind of lesson that transcends mere physical combat and enters the realm of true mastery. Early encounters in the gym battles. In the late 1960s, Los Angeles was a hub for martial artists, a place where raw talent, determination, and innovation collided. Among the many figures shaping the martial arts landscape, two names stood out, Bruce Lee and Joe Louis, though they would come to be forever linked by one explosive statement. Their paths first crossed in a series of quiet, unassuming gyms and training spaces. These gyms were not the glamorous, media-friendly arenas of modern combat sports. Instead, they were sanctuaries of sweat, dedication, and relentless practice. The air was thick with the smell of leather from punching bags, the acrid tang of rubber mats, and the earthy scent of exertion. In these spaces, reputations were built not on headlines, but on hours of repetition, bruises earned, and the subtle mastery of timing and movement. Joe Louis, already a household name in boxing and kickboxing circles, carried the aura of a seasoned champion. His presence in the gym was immediately commanding. Every punch he threw carried history, training victories, and hard-earned experience. His kicks struck like thunder, rattling chains and shaking the very floor beneath him. His reputation as a fighter was rooted in raw power, explosive force, and the ability to end a fight decisively. Spectators, even other fighters, instinctively gave him space. Louis was a man who had earned respect in combat, the kind that demanded attention without words. Bruce Lee, on the other hand, was still building his reputation outside of film and celebrity. To many, he appeared almost unassuming, slender, wiry, and deceptively calm. Yet beneath the serene exterior was a mind constantly analyzing, refining, and perfecting the art of movement. Bruce's focus wasn't on brute strength. It was on speed, timing, precision, and fluidity of motion. Each movement was studied, each strike measured, each step a careful calculation designed to maximize efficiency and effectiveness. For Bruce, martial arts were not just a physical endeavor. They were a philosophical pursuit. He sought to understand principles behind every motion, to achieve a synthesis of mind and body that could anticipate, adapt, and dominate without relying solely on raw force. Their first encounters in these gyms were fascinating to observe. To outsiders, it might have seemed like an ordinary training session, but every jab, every kick, every step was a subtle negotiation of power, philosophy, and ego. Bruce would dart with strikes so fast they were almost invisible to the naked eye, each blow snapping against pads with a sharp, precise crack. "It's not strength," he would say, voice calm but firm. "It's timing and speed. Observe, adjust, respond." Louis would respond with his signature power, throwing kicks and punches with a force that had earned him his reputation. The chains of the heavy bag would rattle, the floor would shake, and the impact would echo through the room. Louis's strikes were visceral, immediate, and forceful, a reminder of the raw, tangible dominance he brought from years in the ring. Yet Bruce's response was never to meet brute force with brute force. He moved like water, shifting angles, slipping through attacks, and punctuating his defense with lightning-fast counters that left his sparring partners momentarily stunned. Their sessions were intense and rigorous. Gloves cracked against ribs, shins smacked padded thighs, and sweat poured from both men, soaking the mats beneath their feet. Bruce's footwork was almost hypnotic, a dance of constant motion, unpredictable and strategic, forcing Louis to adjust, cut angles, and rely on bursts of explosive power. At the end of each session, despite the bruises and exhaustion, there was always a mutual nod of respect. They recognized each other's abilities and, in their own ways, admired them. Bruce would often call Louis one of the best fighters he had ever encountered, while Louis, outwardly at least, acknowledged Bruce's creativity, speed, and innovation. But admiration was accompanied by doubt. Louis, who had proven himself in real tournaments with blood judges and roaring crowds, couldn't help but wonder how Bruce would fare under true competitive pressure. Bruce had not yet faced the unforgiving intensity of tournament fights, where every misstep could mean defeat. To Louis, all the demonstrations, drills, and performances were impressive but theoretical. They showcased skill but did not confirm mastery under the chaos and unpredictability of combat. This doubt simmered quietly, hidden behind laughter after sparring sessions and the polite acknowledgement of Bruce's abilities. Yet, Even as skepticism grew in Lewis's mind, Bruce's philosophy and skill were undeniable. The man moved like a force of nature, blending art with precision and timing, challenging every preconception about fighting. Their interactions in gyms became a silent battle of ideas. Bruce was testing more than reflexes and power. He was testing principles, teaching in motion the idea that mastery could not be measured by force alone. Lewis, for all his experience and accomplishments, found himself forced to confront this in ways he had never encountered. It was in these private sessions that the seeds of tension were planted. Lewis's doubts, combined with the pressure of public expectations, gradually coalesced into a conviction. If Bruce Lee was so brilliant, why had he not proven himself in the crucible of the ring? And yet, the more Lewis observed Bruce, the more he realized that strength alone could not define the limits of mastery. In time, this growing conflict between admiration, doubt, and the challenge to his own ego would culminate in a public declaration that shocked the martial arts world. Bruce Lee is overrated. Before the cameras, before the headlines, before the debates that would divide fans and fighters alike, the story was one of sweat, dedication, and subtle confrontations in small, unassuming gyms. These early encounters revealed much more than fighting technique. They revealed philosophy, personality, and the tension that arises when raw power meets unparalleled skill and intellect. What began as quiet sparring would soon explode into a public debate that forced the world to consider not just who could strike hardest, but who truly understood the essence of combat, the private confrontation. Weeks had passed since Joe Lewis's public statement declaring Bruce Lee overrated, and the world of martial arts was still abuzz with debate. Reporters camped outside Lee's home, students whispered in hallways, and fans speculated endlessly. Yet amidst all this noise, Bruce remained outwardly calm, focused on his craft and his philosophy. To the casual observer, it seemed as if he had chosen to ignore the insult. In truth, Bruce was preparing, refining his mind and body for a confrontation of an entirely different kind, one that could never be measured by public opinion, trophies, or newspaper headlines. Eventually, Bruce arranged a private meeting with Joe Lewis. There would be no reporters, no cameras, no distractions. Only the two men and a handful of trusted students would witness the encounter. The gym was dimly lit, the heavy bags hanging silently, absorbing the weight of the room's tension. The smell of leather and sweat hung thick in the air, a familiar yet almost ritualistic scent that marked the seriousness of what was about to occur. Joe Lewis arrived first. His presence immediately, the air was thick, almost suffocating, as if the room itself anticipated the coming clash. Lewis spoke first. His voice was sharp, tinged with challenge. "You don't belong in the ring, Bruce. You talk philosophy. I fight." It was an assertion grounded in experience, a statement that defined the way he measured skill, through competition, through impact, through victory. The story of Bruce Lee and Joe Lewis is more than a tale of two fighters. It is a lesson in philosophy, discipline, and the true meaning of mastery. On the surface, it's easy to see this as a clash of fists, a debate over who was stronger, faster, or more skilled. But when we look closer, we see something far deeper: the power of restraint, the value of strategy over brute force, and the understanding that real mastery lies not in winning battles, but in mastering oneself. Bruce Lee's response to being called overrated reminds us that true strength is not always physical. It is mental, emotional, and philosophical. It is the ability to maintain focus under pressure, to act with purpose rather than ego, and to demonstrate one's skill in ways that transcend public opinion. Joe Lewis, for all his legendary power and accomplishments, ultimately recognized, privately and profoundly, the truth in Bruce Lee's single, unforgettable sentence: the highest level of fighting is not to fight at all. This story resonates beyond martial arts. It is about humility, discipline, and the quiet victories that often go unseen. It teaches us that criticism, doubt, and rivalry can be transformed into lessons that shape our growth, and that wisdom often arrives in unexpected ways. Bruce Lee's life, philosophy, and legacy continue to inspire millions because he understood this principle deeply, and because he lived it both on and off the mat. So, who was the better fighter? The question isn't just about punches or knockouts. It's about vision, philosophy, and the way we define mastery. Bruce Lee showed us that fighting is as much about the mind and spirit as it is about the body. And Joe Lewis's journey reminds us that even the strongest among us can learn, grow, and be humbled by insight and wisdom. If this story inspired you or made you think differently about strength, skill, or discipline, leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Which philosophy resonates with you more, the power of action or the power of restraint? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story where history, philosophy, and martial arts collide. Until next time, remember, mastery isn't about proving yourself to the world. It's about understanding yourself, pushing your limits, and knowing when to act and when not to.